because you only created one new root.
No, it's dead.
So this would create just one. But if you
Whoa,
did it in such a way like this, you could create two new.
From here, you can drive.
No, I'll be home. Like, this is gonna break. I'll be home.
Oh, no, it's just like a break. Yeah.
Did he get close to
It's like the last
That'd be actually really interesting.
It's getting stuck.
Jacobowski invited me once for this October.
I thought he got really close to him.
Just now, yeah. He was like,
Whoa,
we're just freaking going to conference.
Yeah,
October,
it's close to him, but
not 22nd.
You really said that right?
Yeah,
Wow.
just
what I was saying was that if you
I don't know what it
had
is.
this
That's so
I was trying to find it. I
triangulation,
can't find the
and you
conference
added this
stuff.
one, you could create two circles.
Yeah,
Because you create two curves using the room. Which means that it's possible to add a point.
We should create more bets for our grades are in the Discord.
I'll put it right now.
I'm gonna do it right now. I think I got 60.
Me and Josh.
I got.
We're thinking that it was
partial pair or not?
bounded by n minus 2. In the sense that if you have it as one, you can add one more circle, but the points for could potentially add two
Let's do
circles.
that.
But I was looking at. Did he post the grades or something?
No, I just
placing bets.
Replacing bets.
on movies that we can.
I'm feeling. I'm not even.
You're gonna say 80%, and I'm gonna 80 base.
I think I was saying it, but yeah. I feel like I did good.
Better than 0.
Yeah,
Bro, I nearly finished the extra credit problem.
I didn't even think about it. I was like, I don't even want to.
I got a decent
I almost finished the extra credit problem.
What do you really got? I bet she's better, to be honest.
Yeah, I was talking to her. She's not. I think she was more just scared for the test as opposed to doing that. It seems like you should study a bunch.
Yeah, I guess it is pay off. I looked at that second problem and I was like, or the third problem, I was like, what the heck am I doing?
I'm not going to spend so much time writing down every definition. Because it's too clutch. This is like coach's notes. Or I did have to print also. So.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that would do it.
Yeah, it's like, I know what they are, but I don't know its definition specifically, trust me, or,
I completely agree.
yeah, like, we should go to his office on Tuesday.
We should get one.
I mean, I'd be happy to go.
Okay.
It's always fun.
I've never done that before, so, there's always time to start something new.
I mean, that's just pretty cool. That's what's going on.
Oh, you know,
You just go to the point.
you better get this grade by before the weekend.
I'm gonna tell them I'm withdrawal today. Should tell them,
What would you do, just,
Do we get next question?
It's a different meaning to take the domain. Yeah, that was pretty.
I was thinking about this thing getting hit on my bike. I was going down the ramp. Got that road on the ramp.
You ever actually hit by a car?
I've been hit by a car, but not on my bicycle. I was thinking if I just hit a wreck, someone will swing.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. Yeah, the next again. I got that car on my cs437 final. Slid over the hood because I was skating through it.
Final one was like a tire.
You're guessing.
I didn't know I went into the loop after crossing into the flash.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's funny.
almost done with, here there is various things,
Or whatever you think you got.
neat stuff. Here, there is a question that so there is a question that is very easy or very hard, depending if you got the right algorithm from the homework that is coming. And you'll go to this GeoGebra and it will give you a random set of points, and they are triangulated. And what I'll ask you is to write label next to each vertex. And these vertices, these labels, will have the following property. If you have two vertices that are connected by an edge, they should have different label. So every label, well, you can use the same label multiple times, like this C has label of 1 and E has also label of 1. But if I have an edge connecting these two vertices, then they must have different labels. And the labels have to be integers, and there is a bound about how many different labels you can use. So once again, download this image and think about the algorithm that can help you find such labels so that you can give every vertex a different labels, but there is a bound on how many different labels you can use. And if you have, like in this case, you see this label, this vertex has label of 4, and it connects to 1 with label of 1, 2, 1, 2, and there is 3 hidden there. So find out the algorithm, otherwise it's really hard. And the algorithm is very much influenced or similar or something to unit fist theorem, that how we found an art gallery, remember? And how did we decide that we can find a set of guards that is only of cardinality n/3 in a polygon. That's one thing that you need. And you also need Euler theorem and stuff that we show about triangulation. So I said it's either a very easy or very hard, and so please let others struggle with it before you start diffusing ideas. But without fully understand how did we get to the n/3, and without using other resources, it's going to be a hard question. Make sense? So, and it's very easy if you fully understood the n/3, including all pieces of the proof. Okay, that's a cute question. I define, normally Voronoi diagram, we are saying for every point, I have a region where this region is all the points. Every site, I have a region, and this region are points that are closer to this site, more than they are close to other sites. So here we are just, and it's actually practical. We are switching it. For a point, I have a set of sites. I have a point Q, not one of the sites. Site is just a point, but I want to have these special points, like hospitals, so these are the sites. Q is just a normal regular point. And I want to define for Q what is the furthest away site. Check the distance from Q to each site and look at the furthest away, the one that maximizes the distance. Remember, maximum is maximize the Euclidean distance, and arg maximum is which site is the one that is giving me this particular distance. So now after I define what is the furthest away point, furthest away site, I can ask what is a Voronoi diagram of for where points are in the same region, if and only if they have the same furthest site, not the nearest, the furthest away site. So as a warm-up to do just now, what happened if I have two sites? Let's do it together. I have just two sites. What is the furthest site Voronoi diagram? Yeah.
A line.
It's a line. What's special about points on this side of the line? It's all the points that are more further from P1 rather than the distance from P2, and vice versa. What now? I have 3 points that are collinear. That's part B of this question.
Another line. They're collinear.
They are collinear.
Is there a line between P2 and P2?
They're not necessarily equally distant, but they're all collinear. So I heard kind of correct answer.
Parallel lines.
What would it be?
Yeah.
So I think with 3 sites, you'd end up with some edge cases. So
They're collinear. That's
Right.
definitely edge case. I'm not asking about the general.
right. So anyone who's in site 2 or phase 2, right? If you do a diagram of them, centered on P2, anyone in that would see P2 as their closest, and anyone else would be farther.
I'll be nastier. In this diagram, what is the face of P2?
There isn't one.
It'd be
There is none. P2 doesn't have a side. I draw a line. Again, it's an edge case but all the points here are furthest away from P3 comparing to their distance from P1 and P2, and all the points here are furthest away from P1, and poor P2 has no representation. So, agree? Counterintuitive, undoubtedly, and of course, heavily relies on them being collinear. Okay, and then I'm talking about the smallest enclosing circle or the smallest enclosing disk. Now I have endpoints, and I'm looking for the smallest disk that shrink around all these points. And I want you to prove that the center of this disk is either on an edge of the first site Voronoi diagram or on a vertex, and to tell me when is when. That I'll let you to meditate at home. Okay, so the center of the smallest enclosing disk is one of the heavily relates to the Voronoi diagram, but not to the nearest point Voronoi diagram, to the furthest point Voronoi diagram. Next question. I have a triangulation. Let's say next question is something about a DCL exercise. So I already uploaded a triangulated surface, and this triangulated surface I gave you this question as it's triangulated. So almost every face is a triangle except of the outside face. And people actually came to me after 2-3 lectures ago and said, hey, in the slides that you have, the outer face, you forgot the slide doesn't show any of the of the half edges for the outer face. So I have a half edge over here. I have only blue, that's depressing. I have the half edge only here, I have the half edge only here. For this edge I have, it's in the triangulated part, except that they are not triangle, but doesn't matter. I have two normal half edges, each one is a twin of the other. But for the ones that are on the outer boundary, the data structure just had null in this case. You were asking what is a twin, you were asking, let's exhaust. Here is one of these half edges that face the outer boundary, and for every edge, every half edge, remember, you can ask what is a twin of this half edge, which normally should have pointed toward a half edge in the opposite direction, but it's not, just missing from your array. You're doing it and you got an error, there is nothing there. So the question is, you already uploaded this data structure into your memory. Sometimes they don't have the outer face because there are fewer operations that you actually need the outer face comparing to just a triangle. You already have it in your data structure. I give you I told you about one of the faces that is neighboring the outer face, and I want you to reconstruct the half edges. And you need to do it by going from a face to face to face. Don't exhaust all the triangles, don't exhaust all the faces, only the ones that are bounding the outer face. It's a simple exercise with DCL. Okay, I think that that's enough as far as, and other questions are more recycled or more obvious. And use the hints, and the hints here said in particular that if I have a set of keys, x1, x2, ... xn. These are just keys, are just numbers, and that's their order. And here is xk, and I want to know what is the rank of xk. Rank of xk is how many keys are smaller than xk. Cool with everybody? The rank of the smallest element should be 1. Rank of the second smallest should be 2 and so on. So I can ask what is the rank of xk when it's sorted. And to answer the rank question, you can answer in order k time by just, let's count if it's sorted, if it's a search tree, let's count how many keys there are before it. But that will take possibly linear time if there are a lot of keys. Or I can go take the opposite approach, which would be, let's write down on each element what is its rank. 1, 2, k, and what is its rank. And then once I found an element, I can find the rank immediately in constant time. But now if I'm inserting x of 1.5, some key between x1 and x2, now I need to spend linear time in updating the rank of everybody else. So there is a very simple trick called augmented data structure. I'll talk more about this trick when we'll talk about geometric data structure like quad trees and KD trees and R trees. We'll see how exactly it's manipulated. What you need to know at this point, unless you've seen it in 345, 245, it's not a complicated trick. But using this trick, I can find the rank of any arbitrary element and do find, insert, delete as normal tree. And everything and each operation just takes order of log n. So in log n, like in every normal search tree, I can do insert, delete, find, but I also store some extra fields on the tree. In particular, what I do is that here is a subtree. Over here in the big tree, I'll just store how many keys there are in this subtree. another subtree. This subtree knows how many keys there are over here. The root of the tree, of course, knows how many keys there are. And if you are keeping just these fields, then during a find operation, you can find the rank, and only in log n. And when you're doing insert, delete, find, you're updating some of these counters, but only log n. So it's log n for everything. So you need it for some of these questions. Yeah. We want to basically continue with a Delaunai triangulation, but I felt active enough to show you some strange Voronoi diagrams. So strange Voronoi diagrams would be normal nearest site Voronoi diagram would mean I have a site, a point. It defines a region underneath it, around it, all the points that are closest to it. If the Voronoi diagram is friendly enough, like Euclidean, it will be even convex cell, and it will be one cell per each point, and the complexity, at least in the plane, will be linear, and there are no counterintuitive things. So I thought that I'll entertain you with playing a bit with the parameters, and strange thing will happen. For example, one of the basic concepts is that in normal Voronoi diagram, look at a cell. Inside the cell there is a site. Somewhere in the middle of the cell there is a site that defines a hospital, because it's all the points that are closest to this hospital. So let's create a Voronoi diagram, but with n square many cells. And so I created a few points over here. 1 to 5 points. It could be n of them over here, B1, B2, B3, all the way up to B5, just in this example. And I place them on a very moderate arc. They could have done it or just vertically one above each other, but GeoGebra doesn't allow me to have them collinear, so I just broke it a bit. So, these are the main points. And I defined their Voronoi diagram, and their Voronoi diagram are just these infinite strips that go all the way from left to right, just vertical strips. And I place A1 over here, and what is a boundary? What is a cell of A1? All the points that are closer to A1 more than they are for B1, it will be everything bounded by this line. And A1 versus B2 is one of the other line, and so on. Am I surprising anybody? Similarly for A2, all the distances between B1 to BI. Everybody sees the Voronoi diagram, understand how there is a Voronoi diagram of 7 sites right here, B1 to B5, and A1 and A2. A1 and A2 and the BIs. And now I want to say that if, depending on the site that I'm heading toward, I might need to rent an expensive car because it's a fancy location, or I might rent let's not insult anybody, I might rent a cheap car because it's not a fancy resort right there. So, but if I rent a fancy car, then I'm also paying per mile more than if I'm renting a cheap car. More gas per mile. So in short, after all this wording, every site has its rate, WI, and the distance from a point Q to a site, to hospital PI, is the Euclidean distance, the distance that we always know, times WI. Individual for this site, the distance from Q, any point Q, arbitrary point in the plane, to the site PI is individual for this site, Euclidean distance times this cost. If it was only the renting cost, then it was called additive weighted Voronoi diagram, where I'm just adding different weight for it. But here I'm multiplying the distance by this constant. So you see the point Q over here, and I'm measuring the distance from A1 to Q, and the distance is 7.39. And at this moment, the weight, and I'm only going to change the weight of two of the points A1 and A2. The weight of these 2 points A1 and A2 is 1. So what is the weighted distance from A1 to Q? It's the Euclidean distance, 7.39, times the weight W1, which is blah, this one. People, please tell me if it's, because it's mostly in the lecture that I'm doing now, plus so if it's not clear, please stop me. And you can find it in various textbooks, but not exactly in this order place. Okay, so far the way I just see the normal Voronoi diagram, because the weight is 1. They all have the same weight, which is just to say the distance is just Euclidean distance. What I want you to pay attention is what happens when the weight of A1 will be higher than the weight of going to B1. That is, to a point that was equidistant between B1 and A1. Before that, it's on the bisector, but right now this point will be if W1 is start to be larger than 1, then the distance to A1 will become larger than the distance to B1. In other words, the equidistance bisectors will shrink toward A1. Equidistance will shrink toward A1, and I find it strangely satisfying to see how they shrink. So I'll start increasing it. So here is a cell of A1. I just defined the cell of all the points that are closer to A1 than B1 after the weighting. The distance from a point to B1 did not change, but the distance from a point to A1 is the Euclidean distance times 4.42. So to be equidistant between B1 and A1, I need to be 4 times closer, 4 times further away from B1 to A1. And strange things are happening. Who is my nearest neighbor right here? My weighted nearest neighbor.
Is it B2?
It's B2. So from here to walk from B2, it's still closer to go through here instead, because I'm not close enough for this weight to be closer to A1. But if I start walking toward B2, then at some point I'll be closer to A1. But distance-wise, I'm closer to A2. Let's increase the costs a bit. Look at it. That's a cell of the Voronoi diagram, because all the points here, their nearest neighbor is B3. What is the definition of a cell? 2 points are in the same cell if I can walk from one to the other without crossing any boundaries. So that's one cell of the Voronoi diagram. It corresponds to the site B3. This is another cell that also corresponds to B3. But in between, there is a cell that corresponds to A2.
So in that middle zone between the bubble things for A1 and A2, it's, yeah, right there, it's still cheaper to go to B3,
Mm-hmm.
so you go through
A1.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to A1.
Yeah, the distance to B3 is smaller. What we broke, the concept that we broke, is that we are used to think that, hey, if out of all of you, he is the closest to me, then as I'm walking toward him, he still stays the closest. That's a axiom that is broken here. Okay. And actually, if you think about wireless transmission, that's not that surprising when you play with signals to noise ratios, that you have to have signal to noise beyond some level. It could be, if you understand me, that's fine. If not, that completely ignore. A will transmit in an amplitude that B can hear it. C will transmit at an amplitude much weaker, such that D will hear C but will not hear A. That is, D will hear C much stronger than it will hear A, but if I'm going further away from it, then B will say between C and A is much stronger when I'm standing at B, while D say between A and C is much stronger, so I hear C. Okay, so it's not maybe that surprising. But now I started with n sites. The input is of size n. What is the complexity of the Voronoi diagram? How many cells? In this case, you can count, but I can, of course, go on and on. So you see that I can take any normal cell and break it into n new cells by introducing A1, A2, A3, A2. I need to space them carefully. But the same cell will now be broken into n cells from which n minus 1 are empty, don't have a site inside them. So it's n square complexity. It's n square to build it if I want a DCL, data structure, but it's only defined by n sites. I thought that it's entertaining. Let's have yet another example of a somehow surprising Voronoi diagram. So I'm taking a ring. Forget about the clock option. Before it stopped, or since it stopped working, I just need a ring around it. And you see on the ring 1, 2, 3 points. These are 3 sites. Now I'm not in the weighted Voronoi diagram, but I'm going to 3 dimensions. No more weighted Voronoi diagram, but I'm going to 3 dimensions. You see point P1, P2, P3, where the stickers are. And these sites are on a plane. Here are these sites. And what's a Voronoi diagram that they define in 3 dimensions? You guess it. Since they are all on a plane, then here are, if they are on the, sorry, they are all in a space, but on the XY plane, that's a Voronoi diagram of these points. And since it's 3D, but the sites are still on the plane, then every such line becomes a plane. Everybody agrees that the Voronoi diagram of 1 to 3 sites will be these planes that separate them, but these planes go all the way toward you. Can I use your help? And let's even have the camera. So I think just hold it vertically. They're both basketball. Basketball. So we keep this plane stiff It's just in the middle of the circle. And we are rotating the basketball around this clock, around this swing. The center of the basketball is between the endpoints that I drew so far. I'm moving from one Voronoi cell to the next Voronoi cell to the next Voronoi cell. Everybody agrees? Okay, stay with me another moment. So, rotating the basketball around the ring and using these points, what I do around the clock are the points P1, P2, P3, and I can rotate the basketball around this direction. Let's see if I can. Sorry. And this operation of rotating the basketball, and where at each moment its center is the center of the basketball is closest to one of these points, so it switches from cell to cell. And now I'll add another site on the stick itself. So that's one of the sites. So now the basketball is equal distance from this new point. This new point is one of the guys that you see over here as Q1, Q2, Q3. So this point that I put over here is just Q1. There's a point Q1 rotating the basketball. It is equidistant from Q1 and P1, and equidistant from Q1 and P2, and P2, P3, all the points here. The center of the basketball, I stole to my dog. So you can see exactly where the center is equidistant, or this radius of the ball, equidistant from this point, the point on the line, Q. I picked one of them, say Q8 is the point that fits the radius of the basketball. And as I rotate it around it, its center is also equidistant to one of the points P1, P2, P3 around the circle. And notice that that the basketball, as nicely demonstrated, it's tangent to the stick, meaning that it's the closest point on the stick is this point Q6 that I picked. So far so good. So they are the nearest neighbor, meaning that each time I created a bisector between Q6 and P1, P2, P3. So I created n bisectors. And now I'll ask you, what is a curve that describes all the points that have the same distance from from P, point from the ball, from a fixed point in a line? Is there a curve that describes all the points that have fixed distance from a point in a line? Yes.
Is this a cycloid?
It's not a cycle. It's not all. It's all the points that have the same distance from a point and from a line. That's a line, and that's a point that I fix. So it's a parabola that goes over here. Parabola, one of the properties, equidistance for all the points that have same distance from a line. That is the nearest distance to a line, distance to the nearest point of the line. And a fixed point over here. So that would be a parabola, and now I'm making the parabola rotating. So you still don't understand why the parabola is good for, but at least Q6 and each one of the points Pi, I generated a bisector. But now I can replace the radius of the ball. Replace the radius of the ball, place the center of the ball on this bisector. It's still nearest to one of these points of the tangent because it's on the bisector, which is exactly the same distance to the stick, but now it touches, 1 second, it doesn't touch Q, it doesn't touch Q6 over here, it can touch each one of the other points that I put on the stick. So the bisector, the basketball was over here with the fake tennis. I cannot do anything, something larger than the basketball, let it go. Some much larger ball, I can do it with the center here that will touch this point and will stay further away. So I can place end point on the stick times end point of the circle, and I'll find n square points on the, I'm good. So I'll find n square points in 3D, and each such point is its nearest neighbor are 1 point of the stick, 1 point on the ring, and it's further away than any other point. So let's summarize it. It has it behaves a Voronoi diagram, and it's a Euclidean Voronoi diagram, no wait. It has convex cells. The cells live in 3D, of course. Each cell site with S or with C? S, what? Site or site? Site, I mean, it's hospital. No empty sites, as opposed to the weighted Voronoi diagram. Each one is convex. There are therefore which means each one is convex, meaning n cells, and each one is strongly connected. It's convex, it sees its site, but there are more features in the 3D structure. There are cells, now there are faces, and there are edges and vertices. And of course, what do I know about a face? A face is a bisector between two cells equidistant from two faces. So the number of faces is constant times n squared. Why it's not n squared? Because it was n half times n half. So that was the number, yeah. And yeah, that's it, because Voronoi diagram in 3D is really, really important in shape reconstruction. But it's not realistic input model in the sense, and there is a whole research area of what is realistic, what happens if I introduce noise, if I look at data that comes from real structure. I had to work quite hard and to generate this example, and there are results about what is average Voronoi diagram. But at least it shows you that in the worst case, your intuition about cells as must contains their site. That's not true in the weighted case, or that if there are only n cells and there are only n complexities, that's not true, because the number of faces and therefore vertices and lower dimension creatures could be quadratic even though the input is only linear. And that's only in 3D. So it's good, yeah.
And
that mean like in 4D space, the number of faces could be n cubed?
Roughly it will behave like n to the d half. So every second jump it will be. So it's an example of the chaos of dimensionality A, and B, it will be a good motivation of why we'll study about approximated Voronoi diagram. Approximated Voronoi diagram, besides of their simplicity, they also have much lower complexity, nothing quadratic. But the result would be, you ask me who is the nearest neighbor, and I tell you somebody who is 5% away from the nearest neighbor. I'm not making big mistakes, and I'll talk about it much more, but I'm making a bit mistakes. Or else I'm sticking to the exact Voronoi diagram that is fine and maybe tolerable in 2D, 3D maybe also because its n square is really the extreme, but if you have sensors that gives you 10 sample points through the day, then 1,000 to the power of 5 becomes, 10 divided by 2, 10 sample, d equal 10, d a half is 5, even 4,000 starts to be unpleasant. Okay, back to our Delaunai triangulation, unless you have questions about anything, including homework 1. Did everybody submit homework 1? I noticed today I was looking at something that was not oriented for my eyes, so I wouldn't do it again, but everybody submitted homework 1. Does anybody want an extension? From the people that are here, that's not a shame. You just realize all the terrible mistakes and you want another chance to resubmit. Yeah. Great, fantastic. Okay, I'm not waiting with homework 2, but homework 1 submit by tomorrow evening. Perfect. I'll instead of asking for name, I'll just do it for the whole class. So submit. Try to be more or less honest, but as we said, discussions are fine. But write down your own solution and fully understand your own solution. And if not, you'll be sorry about it in the midterm. At least I'll try to get you to be sorry about it. Yeah, Delaunai triangulation. We had a lot of discussion.
Where was in the example you showed with the basketball? Where's the parabola? Where could you show?
If I'll change the size of so I pick this point. That's the only point that I touch, and I touch the stick. So where I touch this point could vary. I'm not insisting that I'm orthogonal to it. So the center might be below the table, but it still touches this ring. Now, for this radius of a basketball, look at its center and now inflate the basketball while it keeps touching this point and keep being tangent to the stick. So in 2D.
So are you saying it'd be like?
In 2D it will go like
this?
Think
my hands are the parabola?
Yes, that's a parabola when I touch this point. Now I'm touching this point, so there is the same parabola that goes throughout the class. Yeah. So now I'm just rotating this parabola in 360, making a surface of revolution, and calling it paraboloid instead of parabola. But yeah. Okay. So naive Delaunai algorithm, which is very close to be the full algorithm, and practically quite doable. It says the following. I have some triangulation, and I can start flipping, sorry, that's not the naive one. Naive here just says start from any triangulation and check. You see two triangles, they are twins. Look at the circle that this triangle define and check only this vertex if it's inside or outside the triangle. Here, this vertex is outside the triangle, So I think that this triangle is fine. If the vertex was inside, I would flip the diagonal. Notice that what I'm not asking you to do here is to check maybe there is another triangle with its vertex inside. You don't need to do it, and the reason that you don't need to do it is if there is yet another triangle that is not one of the twins, and somebody else will complain. So it's not the problem of this triangle or this one. There will be, when I'll create the whole mesh that's going toward this vertex, there will be somebody else that will complain earlier. It takes a proof by which I waive, but it's, you only need to worry about pair of twin triangles. For each one are the circles that they define contains or does not contain the opposite vertex. So we can start from arbitrary Delaunai triangulation and keep switching. And remember, every time that I switch, that I flip an angle, the vector of angles, every time that I flip a diagonal, the vector of angles is becoming better. Better lexicographically, something very improved. Out of all the 3T many angles, some improvements will happen. It's not necessarily the smallest one. Okay. So you can, in this animation, here is a triangulation that I define, that I start with. Show me, it's a bit hard to check by eye, but still. Is this triangle legit?
Yes. Yeah.
Look at the circle, it doesn't contain anything. Stays alive. For the time being, its fate is not guaranteed, but for the time being, nothing wrong with this triangle. What about this one?
Yeah.
Definitely not, and there are others that not. So I did not start with this one, but yeah. Look at this green triangle over here. Also not good, right? It's enormous and contains many vertices, implying that I'm going to flip this edge. Flip this edge, that's a result. Flip more edges, that's a result, and eventually we're ending up with this triangulation. You see that here at least, I went probably through it very too fast, but you see that here all the circles are empty. Okay, so that's one thing. Here is an n-square algorithms, and that's incremental randomized algorithms. So I'll assume that I keep the Delaunai triangulation of all the points P1 pi minus 1. I don't say anything specifically about the order. Order is arbitrary. Meaning the order that they appeared in the files, that's the order that I use. But I only use the first I minus 1 of them, and I'm about to insert pi. And what I have so far, what I have in every moment is a Delaunai triangulation, and at each step I'll add a point, update the triangulation by adding a few edges, and then start flipping if needed. So I'm not trying to be particularly clever about the order of insertion. So there is a whole mystery of when I'm inserting a point, how do I know which triangle contains this point? Wait for me with this point. The oracle came down to earth and told me that's a triangle that contains a new point pi. Now, just like in the naive or the first algorithm that we saw for triangulation that runs in reasonable time, you found this triangle, the triangle that contains pi. Now connect pi to the 3 corners. Now it's a triangulation for sure. What I'm not sure is that it's Delaunai. But to check if it's Delaunai, all I need to check is pi. I created 3 new triangles. Is this triangle legit? Yes, it's empty, nobody in this part. Is this triangle legit? Yes. Is this triangle legit? Absolutely not. So do an edge flip. Legit. Non-legit. So do one edge flip. Make sense? From here to here. But I'm not out of the woods yet because I erased two old triangles and created two new ones. So now I need to check for the new ones, are you legit or not? And if not, do an edge flip once again. It could be cascading process. So another edge that is swapped, and that will be it in this case. If I have an edge, a point on an edge, not a general position, but but we prefer robust algorithms that don't rely on it, then you're connecting this vertex to both triangles that it connects to. So far it's exactly like we did for normal triangulation. And repeat the same process. Are these triangles legit? But legit, always check it against the triangle on the other side. But that can end in n square time, and we would prefer faster. Yeah?
So if it's O of n to add all the points in, and then O of n to make sure that the triangle is not, the circle describing the triangle is not the chain of the points.
Let me stop. To insert the point before the correction, and ignore the search time. The oracle told me at which triangle it is. Then it's constant time. I just added 3 edges, or even 2 edges in this case. From this point, it's n. And there are n points, and that's why it's n squared.
So could you flip like n edges each time? Is there a chance of that, or is it just up to
Bear with me.
Okay.
So, just an example. It's very therapeutic, GeoGebra. You really need to try it. So just with less example, here is my original triangulation. You see that F is not in the game yet. I'm about to add F. I'm about to add F. What will happen to F? It will be connected to the 3 vertices. So that's the next step of adding F. Again, you have access to all these applets. And now, what do? I look at the circles that go through F, and FCB is one of these. Is a circle, pretty large one, so that looks quite bad. Future of this triangle looks quite bad. And what about DCF, the circle of DCF, this guy, that sounds fine. So I don't feel a need. And FAB, I also think that it's fine. So only this triangle has issues, I think. And what's going to happen with this triangle? Help?
Edge flip.
Edge flip of what and what? BC. Going to connect to. And I think that that's it, if I remember right. And yeah. So started from here, connected to the 3 corners, and did a single edge flip. And now a property that I have to prove to you is that after an edge flip, it will be obvious after the first edge flip, but after every edge flip, the new edge is connected to the newcomer. Again, after no matter how many edge flips I'll do, after an edge flip, the new edge is connected to the newcomer. Okay, so we need the data structures that will tell us, hopefully in log n, at which triangle we are. That's I owe you. What is this data structure that tells me at which triangle I am, and if I'm on the boundary between 2 triangles, just an animation of it. Switching again. And now let's talk about permutations. Here is all the permutations of the number 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 3, 2, 2, 1, 3, all the way to 3 to 1. There is 3 factorial many permutation. If I have 3 of them, and if I have n items, it would be n factorial many permutations. And what I'm not going to do is to generate all of them, way, way too many. What I am going to do is to pick a random permutation. Meaning what? I want each and every permutation to have the same chance to appear. I look at all the points P1 dot Pn. I'm saying they come in order that you, with all your meanness and viciousness, try to get my algorithm to ones really slowly, so I don't trust the order that you gave them to me. Instead, I'll create a random permutation. How do I create a random permutation of the array A that contains A, C, D, B? Here are this original cells, P1, P2, P3, P4. And the algorithm is very simple to create a random permutation. I start by picking a value k between 1 and n, 1 and 4. Pick one of these numbers, say you pick C, swap C with the last element, always the last element, an. So again, I picked a random number. It could be 1, it could be 2, it could be 3, it could be 4. If I sweep 4 and 4, of course, I do nothing. If it's 3 and 4, I swap them. And now I want to pick another random element, but I don't want to pick the same one, so I do n equal n minus 1. So now I'm working only on an array of length 3, pick a random number for between 1 and 3, swap with A3, all the way up to Z. Very strange in this context, but I need a way to create a random permutation. Okay, so I want to convince you that the degree of PR would be, after I'm adding PR, would be 3, because PR, the newcomer, is connected to 3 edges, no matter what. Plus, every new flip that I'll do will add another edge. And I think that that's pretty hard to understand as is, but it's much easier to understand in this GIF. Remember, we had few definitions of Delaunai triangulation or equivalent, and one of them was, look at the Voronoi diagram, and every 2 cells that are neighboring connect by an edge. Every 2 cells that are neighboring connect by an edge. So my input right now contains the points D, all the Q's, A, C, and neither of the 3 points over here. So that's the Voronoi diagram, yeah.
So A, C, and D, they're not part of the set of points, right? They're just an enclosing triangle.
That's related to different discussion, but we said usually all these algorithms, if you don't want to run into headaches of infinite of unbounded cells, you'll just add these 3 points. But doesn't matter.
You add them.
Doesn't matter. Yeah, far away, just so you don't have to handle different cases. But the discussion right here, all these points here are pretty much on a circle. You see all the cells of all these guys, and who is neighbor of whom? D is neighbors of everybody in this ring. I have n points, many points over here, and D is a neighbor of, well, no, it's not, D is not a neighbor, I take it back. D is not a neighbor, but you see all these points are neighboring, so they are connected. But let's see what happens when I add, and now I'm going to throw G2 into the game. So I throw G2 into the game, I insert a G2, and again, the message that we need is to understand something about the Delaunai triangulation, but it's much easier to see in the Voronoi diagram. because in the Voronoi diagram, G2, which is just on pretty much the center of this more or less circle, G2 becomes a neighbor of everybody on here, all the endpoints over here. The cell of G2 becomes a neighbor of each one of these cells, meaning that G2 is now going to connect to all of them. And think about it, in the Delaunai triangulation, it means that G2, the newcomer, every new edge that I create will connect to G2, because he's the one with the new face, who is the one with the new cell of the Voronoi diagram. So every new edge that I'll create in the Delaunai triangulation will connect to it. All the other cells are unchanged. Every two cells that used to be neighbors and stay neighbors after G2 is added stay connected. And that also answers, could it be that I have n changes when I inserted a point? Yes, I just inserted n such points, but maybe it happens only once. Not really. Now I add, stop it. Add G2, add G2, created n edges, roughly n, there is some noise, but created n edges, created G3 just below G2, so now G3 is connected to everybody. But notice that G3 is connected to everybody, but G2 is connected to much fewer. That will be useful. And now I'm inserting G4, and G4 is connected to everybody. So I'm creating n edges per every new insertions that I'm doing. So that could be quite devastating. But what happens if I insert them in the order of first insert G4, and then G3 and then G2? It somehow looks much better order, because G4 is connected to everything else and so on. And somehow there are some good orders and some bad orders. And since I don't know which order is good, I'll pick a random permutation. We'll do it a few times in this course. You don't know which order is good? Do a random permutation. But what's intuition? Why things are happier? Let's understand this convoluted sentence, make sure that everybody understands. I mean, adding a new point pi, and then looking at the new Delaunai triangulation. What would be the degree? Degree, remember, the point, how many neighbors does it have in the new Delaunai triangulation? Its degree would be 3 to start with, plus every new flip that I create will connect it to the new point pi. So how many flips do I do? I can count it by looking at the degree of pi after the insertion. It would be 3 came from, the degree of 3 was not related to flips at all before I did any flips, and now every new flip increases its degree by 1. Question to everybody. I have a lot of points here, P1, P2, P3, P4, and so on. I have a lot of points. What is the maximum degree? P1 has lots of neighbors, obviously. Lots of neighbors with a high degree. Let's do the following experiment. I'll take one of the vertices and I'll remove it. And I'm asking, how many edges do I delete when I remove this vertex? Well, if I remove P1, it could be that I need to remove n edges. If I it's also related to the homework, by the way. If I remove P3, I'll only need to delete 3 edges. Let's say variable. I don't know whom I delete. I'll close my eyes, pick one of them, and delete. Each one has the same chance to be deleted. What's the average number over all, guys? What is the average number of edges that I delete? Why?
In that particular circumstances, because except for the node with a bunch of neighbors, everybody else only has 3 neighbors, except for
Agree.
between.
The answer is 3, but the answer is 3 no matter how I rendered it. Remember, if I remove P1, I delete a lot. If I remove other guys, maybe I delete much fewer. Sorry, the answer is not 3. I take it back. The answer is 6.
6 is the average degree of any vertex in the triangulation, right?
Look at any triangulation, Euler formula plus some of the works that we did after that. You have n vertices, meaning that you have about 2n many faces, and 3n edges. 3n edges, meaning that the average degree is 6. Every edge contributes twice. So if I pick a random, and it's actually a bit less than 6, which is also important for your homework. It's actually slightly less than 6, but just by kind bit. It means that actually there is a vertex with degree 5, because it's just slightly, which is important.
There's some.
But let's understand what the average here means. Average does not mean for nice input or random input versus non-random. The input could be as bad as you wish. The only average here is that I pick the vertex to remove, and the vertex that I'll remove is equally likely to be any one of them. So the average is about if I remove P1 or remove P2 or remove P3, ask how many edges you removed at each one of these cases, and do the average over the n vertices. On average, you remove slightly less than 6. So the degree is about 6. And that's a really amazing idea. Yeah, you wanted to ask, and
But you answered. You just answered my question.
okay.
If the average degree is 6 and each edge counts twice, then isn't the number of edges removed half of 6, so it's 3? Because the degree.
I think that no, because the same edge can be deleted because of both, from both events, if I remove this or remove this. Good point. But no, it's 6. Because so yeah.
Does there have to be a certain number of vertices in the original figure for that to hold? Such that the average degree would be 6?
Is slightly less than 6. No, I think Euler formula will always work. We did it. I mean, let's go over the calculation very quickly. If it's triangulated, look at the number of half edges. I don't know if I can do it really quickly. Look at the number of half edges. Every half edge belongs to one triangle. So per triangle, I'm using 3 half edges. But I still need the Euler formula. Remember, number of vertices minus number of edges plus number of faces is 2. That's where it all stands for. But that's great, because it tells me that if the last vertex was added at random, that is, every permutation is equally likely. I don't know if the last vertex that I added is this guy or this guy or this guy or this guy. For each one of the n cases, let's ask, how many edge flips did I do in each one of the n cases, depending on what's the last one? If I added P1, the number of edge flip is huge because there is many new edges it connects with. If I added P3, then there are 0 flips because it's already connected to 3. The average case of edge flips that I do if the last vertex is picked at randoms from the whole input, the average number of flips would be 6 minus 3 that you're getting for free. So average number of flips is 3. Even slightly less than that. But how do I get to the last vertex to be at random? I'll rearrange all inputs, and now I insert them at a random order, depending on the permutation. Now it almost all stick together. Modulus the data structure, it still didn't tell you how do I find this triangle, but at least you know that once I found this triangle and do all the edge flip necessary, since it's random order, then average on what? You have n factorial permutations, and each one give rise to different number of flips. If I insert these 3 points at decreasing order, I'll have a lot of flips, n square flips. If I'll have them in increasing order, maybe it's only no flips at all. I just added edges. Look at all the possible permutations. Average numbers out of the all permutation is 3. Meaning what? That the expected running time, or the expected running time for the number of edge flips over the whole n insertion is order n. So besides the finding the points, it's linear time algorithm to find the to build the Delaunai triangulation. There is a lot of new ideas to encapsulate here, so we'll go over it, but once again, it's very unlikely to land on a very bad scenario. And why? Because the main image that you do is that I place the points at random order, and now I'm using what is called backward analysis. What is called backward analysis? Because I'm saying I already placed all of them, now I play the video in reverse. I pick one of them at random that I removed. What's the probability that the one that I removed caused a lot of edge flips? Very unlikely. That's just backward analysis, because it's like everything is already there. Now let's remove. Now what's the expected work? And then I need a bit more probability. What is the expected work in the whole algorithm? It's the sum of the expected work of every piece of the algorithm, because as you've probably seen, expected of 2 things is expected of the first plus expected of the second. And these 2 things might be related to each other, depending on each other, completely prevent each other. It's events that might be disjoint or mutually independent or contradicting. I don't care. Expectation is linear. Expected time for the whole algorithm is the sum of the expected of each step, and the expected of each step is constant modulus the point location. So we are left with a point location. And yeah, we'll keep it for next class. Thanks. It was pretty compact, pretty enriched class today. Thanks for staying focused.
The second one were out already?
No, I just showed a few because it needed explanation. Today, tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah. And you can still submit homework yeah, just let me know that good. I think that it's idea-wise, it's one of the heaviest, the hardest classes in this course. Delaunai Triangulation. So thanks for staying focused.
I did look into the average 6. There are a lot of opinions on the internet. Wow, some site that says it's never exceeded 6. 6 is like the upper limit also. So it's not like it may approach 6, but it never crosses 6. So
well, it's actually, if you look at the formula of the sum of degree, it's like 6n minus 2. So
okay.
That's why it's slightly less. But where it's related to the homework, it's that there is somebody with degree less than 6.
But it also kind of assumed the n is pretty big, because I was like trying to construct it in a small Delaunai diagram. I never hit 6, you know, because there's so few edges. But as your diagram get bigger, it get closer to 6.
Well, I can always have one vertex with high degree,
Yeah.
but I cannot have a lot of them.
Right. That was why I was got a little confused there, but I got it.
How far is your bike ride home?
Oh no, 3 miles, 3.5, nothing.
Nice.
What about you?
2
No, it's
miles.
nothing.
2 miles.
That is nice. I'm like 20 miles from home.
Oh,
I
like
can
Moore
no
Valley?
bike. No, I'm like Marana.
Oh, Miranda, even, wow.
Almost, yeah.
It's starting to get really nice out to ride home though.
Still pretty nice.
Have a good
Bye.
day.
Nice sunset. Thanks.
See you.
Mm.